solemnly swear
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
John Kennedy came from a large, rich Boston Irish family. His childhood had been happy, privileged, and secure. The young Kennedy grew up to be a social success as well. That seemed to be the beginning and end of his concern. In 1941, he joined the Navy and later fought in the Pacific War. Kennedy's experiences there, including the sinking of his torpedo boat, his wounding, his survival and slow, painful recovery, matured and steadied him. After the war, in 1946, he went into politics in his home state of Massachusetts and was elected to Congress the following year. It was now that Kennedy began to develop the campaigning style that was to help him to the presidency. With the weight of the Kennedy family's ambition and money behind him, and his own charm and intelligence, he could hardly fail. In 1952, he was elected to the Senate. In 1953, he married Jacqueline Bouvier, a woman as beautiful as Kennedy was handsome. The Kennedy success story continued with his winning the fight in 1960 to be the Democratic Party's presidential candidate.
Your nominee and the next President of the United States, John F. Kennedy.
The battle for the presidency was tough and close, but in January 1961, Kennedy became the 35th American president.
Every nation knows, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
The triumph of election soon faded as real problems crowded in on him. At their head, Cuba. America was divided. Some supported the anti-Castro groups, others backed the revolution. In April 1961, at the Bay of Pigs in Cuba, 1,400 Cuban exiles, secretly prepared and supported by the Americans, landed to overthrow Castro's government. The invasion lasted just 3 days and was a total failure. Yet Kennedy defiantly took responsibility for it, even tried to justify it.
I have emphasized before that this was a struggle of Cuban patriots against a Cuban dictator. While we could not be expected to hide our sympathies, we made it repeatedly clear that the armed forces of this country would not intervene in any way. But let the record show that our restraint is not inexhaustible.
But not only in Cuba was the Bay of Pigs seen as a disastrous start for the new young president. He just had his first test of taking a difficult decision and got it totally wrong. The lesson was noted round the world. It was still remembered in Vienna less than 2 months later, when President Kennedy and the Soviet leader Prime Minister Khruschev met for their first talks. The meeting gave them a chance to weigh each other up. The two leaders did most of the talking. Khrushchev made no concessions. Kennedy felt he'd made no impression. Some believe that at Vienna, Khrushchev, then at the height of his power and prestige, decided that Kennedy was a young man who could be pushed around, especially by him. Nikita Khrushchev had risen to supreme power from poverty. His family lived in the Donetsk basin in the Ukraine, where his father worked in the coal mines. Conditions were immensely hard. Khrushchev went into this factory at 15 as an apprentice engineer. He became politically active and took part in strikes, losing his job. During the 1917 October Revolution, he organized workers' militia known as the Red Guards. In 1918, he joined the Communist Party, becoming a junior commissar in the army. By 1925, he was a district party secretary. In 1934, he was elected to the Soviet Central Committee. As leader of the Moscow City Party, he was responsible for the construction of Stalin's prestige Moscow Underground. Its successful completion confirmed Khrushchev's ability to organize and drive others, as well as Stalin's regard for him. But his big test came at Stalingrad during the Second World War. With defeat imminent, Khrushchev was politically responsible for the besieged city, maintaining supplies, keeping the factories going, and helping to organize its successful defense. At Stalin's 70th birthday celebrations, Khrushchev was already in the highest ranks of Soviet power. He was now well placed to take part in the struggle to succeed Stalin. In fact, after Stalin's death, Khrushchev was just one of the group that took power, but he managed to outmaneuver most of his rivals and visited China's Mao Zedong as one of Russia's two leaders. On his world tours, he adopted a showy, popular style, catching the headlines. Though he was part of a two-man team, he was the one people watched. At home, his style was also different. Stalin had never visited the people or courted popularity, but Khrushchev wanted popular support, and this demanded a new approach. In 1956, he made his boldest move yet. He attacked Stalin's rule and revealed some of the crimes committed during those years. At the same time, he preached peaceful coexistence with the West. He set out to challenge American world domination. In 1957, the launching of the first space satellite, the Sputnik, put the Soviet Union dramatically ahead in the race with the United States to conquer space. In September '59, he became the first Soviet leader ever to visit America.
On behalf of the government and of the people of America, I express the hope that you and they will find your stay among us interesting and useful.
It was designed to convince Americans that the Soviet Union wished to live in peace with the United States. It was all very friendly. But the Americans continued to send their U-2 planes on secret photographic missions over the Soviet Union. In 1960, the Russians shot one down and put its pilot on trial. The effects were disastrous. In Paris, Khrushchev, angered at what he regarded as American treachery, walked out of the carefully prepared summit conference of world leaders. At a stormy news conference, he denounced the Americans and their allies. World tension seemed dangerously high. Things were no better at the United Nations 3 months later.
The United Kingdom will gladly allow any form of inspection and control that is accepted by the Soviet Union. A large number... Well, I'd like it translated if you would.
So this was the 65-year-old man who in June 1961 met the 44-year-old American president in Vienna. Kennedy didn't underrate him. On his return to the United States, he immediately ordered an expansion of America's armed forces at home and abroad. Between 1961 and 62, Kennedy increased the defense budget 3 times. The next crisis was in Berlin. To stop their people fleeing to the west, the East Germans built a wall in August 1961, dividing the city. They did this with Russian support. Kennedy accused the Soviet Union of playing a dangerous game.
The world is not deceived by the communist attempt to label Berlin as a hotbed of war. There is peace in Berlin today. The source of world trouble and tension is Moscow, not Berlin. And if war begins, it will have begun in Moscow and not Berlin.